Isaiah 53, verses 1 through 5. Who have believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we should see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him, and he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did not esteem him. We esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. That's good news right there all by itself. My God. I want to use a topic, the rectifying work of redemption. Somebody say, the rectifying work of redemption. Amen. That's what we want to talk about just for a few minutes today. One of the most frustrating things in life to do is to try to present a truth to someone who is not receptive to that truth. Truth does not always come in a beautiful wrapped package. Sometimes it's raw. Sometimes the presentation of it may not be what we really anticipated. Sometimes truth can be unappealing to the ear and to the spirit of the one that's being shared. Rejection to truth occurs when the listener refuses to adhere to the instruction, advice, or suggestion that is given to them. When truth is rejected, then the lie becomes the replacement. Each of us here are given two choices to any decision we'll ever make in our lives. One is either we will apply truthful precepts to the matter, or we will ignore the truth and go our own way. Many times, truth is rejected simply because of denial. It's easy for us to say a certain truth applies to someone else. But when the truth must be applied to ourselves, we retort and turn in another direction. Isaiah 53:1 begins the chapter with this question: who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? It's a tragic thing when people lose confidence in the mouthpiece of God. In the Old Testament, the prophetic voice was the voice of God to the king, to the nation, to the people of Israel. Whenever they needed to hear a word from God, they referred to the prophet. Whatever the prophet said, it was as if God himself said that thing. Where there was no prophetic voice at that particular time in the Old Testament, then the nation would suffer. Calamities would take place throughout the land. Sickness and disease and all type of things would happen because of the absence of the prophetic voice. Isaiah's question in Isaiah 53:1 is one of concern when he speaks on behalf of those prophets who have even preceded him, who will precede him, and those who were before him. He speaks and asks the question, whose report shall we believe? Out of this myth. And the Lord said, you ain't going to get away like that. You're going to go through this. Huh? I'm not going to take you and you go rejoicing and you miss this storm, son. You need this storm before you get your crown. I got to go through this storm. Come on, somebody. So Jesus said, Lord, if it be your will, let the cup. What was in the cup? Betrayal, denial, all the sorrow and grief of every human being that will ever be born was in that cup. And Jesus said, I can't drink it. And he asked God twice, didn't he? Father, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me. It shows you the humanity of Jesus, that sometimes we feel that things are unbearable, that we cannot handle them. But just as Jesus did, God did with his own son, and it was the love that Jesus had for God that kicked in where he said, nonetheless, if it be not thy will, that this cup should pass, not my will, but thy will be done. Commentators say this, that when Jesus is said in the garden, thy will be done, that before he was ever crucified, that he actually died in the garden. Now he's just going through the motions of what they're going to do to him. But when he said, thy will be done, he was crucified already. Come on, somebody. You see, when you say thy will be done, you have died to what you're getting ready to go through. And what they're getting ready to do to you now, you're ready for it. Come on, somebody. Not my will. So there was an emotional connection to what he was going to deal with. And then there was the physical pain. The 9-inch metal stakes that went through his flesh into the tree. They went through the top of both feet into the wood. The scourging of the bone, what they call the cat o' nine tails that the soldier whipped him with. And he was beaten unmercifully beyond what any man would ever be scourged, until the white tissues of his skin and flesh came out of the wounds as he was scourged. He was lacerated. Each time the bone with metal and bone and that whip would hit his back, it would lacerate his body. So his flesh is being cut open. Are you getting this? But he was wounded, oh God, for my transgressions. Are you getting this? Bruised for my iniquities. How did they bruise Jesus? Oh, the bruises that he suffered and that he inflicted were when he was being persecuted by those his accusers, when they were pulling his beard out of his face. And then they were mocking him and saying, prophesy. If you are the Son of God, give us a prophecy. And then they'd hit him in the face again, and they'd pull another patch of hair out of his flesh. He was bruised when they took the thorns and pressed them into the cranium of his skull, and they pinched nerves in his brain, which is causing all type of excruciating pain to go throughout his body from thorns piercing in the nerves in his brain. Are y'all getting this? So the physical agony and the emotional agony, this is why Hebrews says we don't have a high priest that cannot be touched with the feelings of your infirmity. He knows what it feels like to be rejected. He knows what it feels like to be hurt. He knows what it feels like to be lied on, misunderstood. He knows what it feels like to be abused. He understands every level of emotional, physical pain that we will ever endure in this world. Jesus, our high priest, experienced it. So let the cup pass, and he said, not my will, your will be done. And he gave in to the will of God. Our sorrows deals with extreme sadness or mental distress. It's actually the opposite of joy. The psalmist spoke of the sorrows that even in the 23rd Psalm, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he's dealing with extreme sorrows. Sometimes there are times in our lives that we go through, experience these type of sorrow. But remember, Isaiah said he has borne our grief and carried our sorrows, which means that when we experience these things in our life, then we present the grief and the sorrow to Christ. Christ will give you the strength to bear what you are experiencing. You don't have to hide it or cover it or conceal it or act like you're trying to handle it on your own. He already took care of it. Tell your neighbor, he's already taken care of it. He just wants you to go through the process with him, and he's going to give you the strength to endure your grief. God, he'll totally restore you and renew you and put you right back where you were and treat you no different than what he did before the fall ever occurred. Whenever I sin, whenever I fall, whenever I fail, there's redemption. Thank God for grace. Thank God for mercy. Thank God for his unfailing love. We do things to one another, and sometimes we struggle with trying to forget them, but God forgets. God has the ability to forget every wrong we've ever committed, throw it into a sea, amen, and never hold those things against you again.